Hello everyone, it's Chocolate here. So the Priconne Global servers are shutting down today, and there's a million things I could say about this, but how about I just tell a little story about my journey with the game, and maybe we can reminisce a little bit together about all the good times. The game launched during peak COVID and work from home, and it had something really crucial that I was looking for: long-term resource management and cute anime girls. I started playing and joined a clan called Mega Milk alongside the late Bake and Shaw, who were both also Germans, although the clan had people from all over the world, which was really nice. We had our fun together and discussed the characters and the game and how we would play clan battle. And at the time, there weren't really all that many good resources as I was used to from larger games. Even simple things like whether a projectile would deal damage if you used UB while it was in flight had to be figured out by experimentation. There was no good big resource by the community of other servers that we had access to in English language, and the top clans at the time were notoriously tight-lipped about all the juicy stuff. So after getting smoke bombed one too many times by a shitty guide and being unable to do many of the even really basic comps at the time for clan battle, I just decided, hey, let me pick up one of the more usable Chinese guides and just translate it for my clan, so we have something to work with that we know is actually useful. Because there weren't any reliable content creators at the time, I just decided to release it for everyone, even though I didn't really play the game at a high level at that point. There just wasn't anything out there for the peasants outside of the top clans at the time. Every CB, our little clan, went a little bit higher and higher until at some point we reached top 25. But not in the middle or the low end. We actually reached rank 11 and I think half a hit behind top 10. But at that point it just took a lot. All of the leads were online more than 16 hours a day during CB, and it really took a toll on my personal and professional life. And so after the next CB, where we placed a little lower, it was very clear that all the effort put into it just wasn't sustainable, because we weren't a clan that would get to top 10, and we also wouldn't be able to sustain ourselves in T25 without the same amount of commitment. I decided to retire into top 10. From watching the leaderboards, it was very clear that one clan in particular, Kanakult, was able to do a lot of hits very early in the day and was essentially finished by the time I usually went to bed. And so with a heavy heart, I decided to leave my longtime clan and my friends and move over. I was very worried about what would become of the clan, but fortunately Phoenix from what's now called Void picked them up, and they merged with a clan called Bracers, which also happened to be the clan we lost to in the previous CB where we ranked 11th. I wanted to stay in touch at least somewhat, but because of how the competitive scene worked at the time, where everyone was distrustful of leaks and certain tech was hidden, that really didn't work out too well. Kanakult was my new home, and I could only wish what was now called Mega Milk with Mega written in katakana the best. However, in a move that was peak irony, the clan I had just left to retire into a higher rank clan actually beat Kanakult the next CB, which was funny, even though I got memed on for it. We coasted along under tier grants, and Mina was the chief pilot at the time. There were a lot of Southeast Asians and Europeans, and so every CB after cutoff, we just had all the regular members who were there hit, and everyone who couldn't hit at the time would just be piloted later in the day, so we could finish off CB without much stress and still rank relatively high, because at that point having a good box counted for a lot, and just having 30 players with really good boxes and having an understanding of how CB works was enough to be fairly stable in T10. I was still making my gear guide, and during that time I now had access to something new, a tool called the PCRD calculator. Chinese program which would allow you to trial CB outside of the game, with every character being able to be set to whatever gear you want and any boss from any CB being able to be used. So that was interesting because I was getting the deep knowledge of the game I really wanted to for a long time. But there is a conundrum now, because I really wanted to incorporate my new understanding of what gear was required for each CB, but that was kind of a shitty thing to do for my clan, because there were people working really hard each CB to come up with timelines and figuring out which gear and which levels to use for units, so I couldn't just take all their work and publish it for the wider community. I provided safe ranks and some general disclaimers about how to not brick your units to play CB, but it didn't really feel right to put up all the highly optimized stuff. Thanks to having some communication with the Void clans, there was healthy competition, and at the time Global had its own unique meta, because Crunchyroll kind of screwed up when UE released and Christina banner and Astana banner. Everyone who played back then really knows what I'm talking about, because it was extremely cope. The first CB with Phase 3, which had bosses with much higher defenses than before, we didn't have any shredders who could actually penetrate those defenses effectively. And so it was just a race to the bottom with who could at least scrunch together teams that could somewhat hit the bosses. It took a toll on the timeliners, because giving out timelines for 15 bosses that were mostly unique to Global was quite a tough ask. Sim back then was just some rough early version of what the Chinese used, and we weren't really able to fix bugs by ourselves. There was always a dangerous chance that come CB, the timeline that you worked your ass off for just didn't work at all. It was chaotic, and definitely not the retirement I was imagining, especially because Lunar Tower came out and I decided that I just had to get in on that and actually make a guide. And back then Fried Chicken wasn't there to do all the research for me. Also, the clan that dominated at the early parts of the game, Scarlet, kinda boomed, which happened to coincide with us in the cults trying to make an alt clan, just to place all our alts in so they don't leech from real clans. And that somehow turned into a real clan where all the Scarlet refugees ended up in, with the leads being Alter, Oligarchs and F. The new founded Arisa cult, or name change cult, wanted to reach for rank 1, meanwhile Kana cult and Saren cult just chilled in mid to low T10 every CB. It came close a couple times, but always just fell slightly short. Around this time, finally a collab was started between Void and us, the cults. It felt really nice, exchanging information with others who also cared about the game at a higher level, and not having to constantly worry about leaks and spy campaigns between our clans. We also had a shiny new sim, which my boomer ass didn't use. Competition was strong, and it was also pretty fun. At that point there was no need to hold back on information between each other, so it all came down to who actually executed better during CB and who understood how to optimize routing and each individual hit. Unfortunately, over time, engagement in Kana cult, and noticeably also Arisa cult, kind of slowed down. More people were just not showing up for CB and just expected pilots to hit their hits for them. It's all culminated in Tigran's, the until then leader of Kana cult, stepping down and retiring, and proposing a merge between Kana cult and Arisa cult. So we did just that, with me as the leader coming from Kana cult and Alter and Oligarchs as the leaders from Arisa cult. We took all our most active players together and formed one new clan. I wish I could say things went perfectly, but the road was still stony. The corporation had grown into what later became known as the Lab, with more clans and alliances joining. Actually playing CB was still difficult. I never really learned how to do it at a high level. Had to learn how to optimize routing and hits. A new clan was kind of in limbo between being fully competitive going for R1 or just chilling as casual T10. Clans to beat at the time were my former clan, now called Vanilla, and Ethereal. Ethereal wasn't even in our collab and they still got R1 several times. It felt really good when on our inaugurational CB we actually managed to finally get rank 1. We had some mixed results over the next couple CB and there was some internal drama. But when I went on vacation to visit a hardstyle festival in the Netherlands, DEFCON 1, we actually won that CB without me ever lifting a finger, aside from figuring out a couple timelines. And that was the beginning of our win streak. We won every single CB after that until EOS. More and more really cool people joined us, and when clans boomed, their leaders tended to come over to the best of them. And so at some point we noticed that almost a whole clan was comprised just of leads, former leads, giga pilots and everything in between. It allowed us to do things we otherwise never would have been able to, like looping every single time, doing the pre-Nyaru loop CBs like CB19 and CB20 and CB22. Even when we thought it was impossible to finish all our hits day 5 with the little time that was available, we still somehow managed to do it every time. It felt good being the best and being part of something that managed to achieve everything we set out to do. But hubris was our undoing in a way. After Nyaru dropped and we clinched the first Nyaru CB with a dominant lead, there wasn't really a way to win the CB after that, because it required bricking the boxes of so many members to run the timelines that would be required to do it. So Lunar Cult was born. Several of us kept a lot of old accounts, just in case, or to have access to blank units, or just another account that can be bricked instead of one of our members or our own. But things didn't go quite as planned, because Lunar Cult was the clan that was supposed to be focused on. All the big pilots and players were supposed to go to Lunar Cult and focus on finishing hits there, with Kasumi Cult just enjoying a casual T10 for one. Instead, what happened was Kana Cult pushed for R1, and Leo and Alter were left in Lunar Cult to fend for themselves with very little outside help. This bred resentment and required some serious discussions and reconciliation until finally on day 3, Kasumi Cult was put on the path it was supposed to be on all along, just chilling with a casual that allowed us to finish hits quickly, and all the biggest members just focusing on getting Lunar Cult R1. And it worked really well, in fact, because Lunar Cult took R1 with a significant 5-lap lead, and Kasumi Cult still managed to get R2 with a very slim margin over the 3rd place Humanity. The next 2 CB came and went, and unfortunately that's when we got the EOS announcement. A lot of things can be said about how Priconne Global went out, but that's not what this video is about. All good things come to an end, so let's just remember the good times. Everyone's forced to move on, and personally I am having a lot of fun with other games. Priconne JP, which is better than Global in every single way, especially since it brought me that feeling of resource management and scarcity back that didn't exist on Global for the last couple months. Punishing Grey Raven, which makes me pull my hair out every week while grinding Pain Cage. And finally the Atelier series, which I finally found the time to play in, which is just so cute. And Pravda from Sophie 2 makes me cry every time I see her. So yeah, even though this channel has been kind of barren for the last couple months, I do plan to do at least one more Priconne video and maybe upload some of the wacky adventures we're having in JP at the moment. Let me know what your fondest memories of the game are, and it's a big world out there, but it's also surprisingly small at times, so like the lyrics of the main team say, even through the bad end, let's meet each other again and again. Too corny? Maybe, that's fine. So, until next time, goodbye.
君